Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to learn about Unity. This lesson is getting to know Unity, and we're going to do a project called Hello World in part 2. Getting to know Unity, and here's a question. What makes Unity so great? That is a good question. That is a question that deserves to be answered. Unity is a professional quality game engine, so it's a game engine that's basically designed for professionals to make video games. It targets a variety of platforms, so you can use it on a Mac, you can use it on a PC, you can use it on Linux, and also you can make games for Mac, PC, Linux, but you can also make games for different phone platforms. You can make it for the Xbox, for different game consoles as well. So very platform, works very well. Also uses a lot of different resources, so you can get code from all over the place. You can use Java, you can use C Sharp, so it's really multi-platform. Okay, has tons of built-in features, so physics simulations, maps, dynamic shadows, etc. A lot of the hard work has been done for you already. You can just get up and running, making your 2D and 3D games. Has a good visual workflow, which just means it's easy to use and fast. There's a high degree of cross-platform support, which we already discussed, and it uses a modular component system. You can read through this, okay, but basically it's a little bit different than the inheritance structure that we use with Greenfoot. In Greenfoot, a wombat can do everything that an actor could do. It inherited all of its methods. But there are some downfalls to it, because what if you wanted to make something that was a lot like a wombat but had some different characteristics? Sometimes it was a little bit tricky to do those things. So Unity uses what's called a component system, where you can just drag and drop stuff. So you can write code or for how to make an enemy, right? And you can drop that on 3 different guys, so they can all have enemy characteristics. But this guy moves, and this guy moves, but this guy doesn't. So we don't drop the motion component on him. And this guy shoots, and this guy shoots, but this guy doesn't. So you can kind of mix and match and drag and drop, and it makes it a little bit more better. Makes it more better. Okay, so let's take a look at some Unity games. Here are some professional titles made with Unity. So you can take some time and look at all of these for the PC, the mobile, the console. Okay, so we can take a look at that. And also we're going to look at this. Here's a list of lots of games that were made in Unity. You'll recognize some, so like Crossy Road and Lara Croft, and so there's some decent titles that were made with it. Okay. So take some time and see if you can find and play one of these games, and show me. I'd like to see what you find. And then the next thing we're going to do is play a student-made Unity game. So go to the arcade machine and see what students made last year, see what kind of success students have had with it. And next, after that, we're going to open up a project. You're going to have to, I don't know where this is at on your computers, but you have to poke around and find it. Here's where it might be found. Okay, so let's see here. Let's see if we can find it. Okay, so here's where I found it on this particular computer. It was in Documents. There's a new Unity project, and then in the Assets folder, there is the car scene. So we're going to go there. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is learn the Unity interface. Okay, the first thing we're going to learn is there's the Scene tab, and in the Scene tab, you can move around. Okay, and you can drag stuff and move it. And then in the Game tab, you can actually hit play and the game will run. Let's go to the spiel though, and let's keep looking here. Okay, so here's some things. Look through this. Take some time to read through this real quick for the Unity interface. Okay, so the Scene tab. Write this down. See what the game world looks like. Move objects around. We're going to practice this right now. Moving things around. The toolbar at the left of the toolbar for scene navigation and transforming objects. So let's take a peek at that real quick and see what that looks like. Okay, so first of all, we know here's a Scene tab, the Game tab. If you hit Run, you can use the keys on the keyboard, and you can drive your car around, and you can jumps like that. Okay, and then if you want to stop, hit that to stop. And now we can go to the scene, and then as we said before, on the toolbar, you have all these things for navigating. Okay, then let's look at a couple things on the spiel, and then we'll actually start navigating stuff. Okay, all right. So if you want to move the camera around, the middle button will move. If you press Alt and drag, it'll orbit, and if you press right Alt and drag, it will zoom. So let's practice that real quick. Let's see what that's going to look like. Okay, so on the toolbar we click here, this is for moving the camera. So if we move in and out with the middle button or drag with the middle button, okay, so scrolling the middle button, dragging the middle button, so we can do that. Okay, if we hit Alt and left drag, we can look around the scene. Okay, and holding Alt and then right dragging, we can also zoom in and out. Okay, so we can navigate around the scene. Okay, and then next we can actually do stuff with objects. Okay, so if I click this button, I can actually translate the object, which means I can move it around. So you have your little arrows. Okay, if I have this, I can drag the blue or green, I guess, the yellow. If I can grab the yellow and then the red, so I can rotate this thing around depending on which color axis I grab. If I do this, I can actually make it larger and wider and deeper. Okay, and then you can do the same sort of thing with this in a different way. You can change the size with that. Okay, let's go back to the spiel. Okay, so I want you to make sure you practice doing that. Move things around. And so scene navigation, and then translate is move, rotate is spin, and scale is to resize. Okay, and all those things that we're dealing with are mesh objects. They're made up of a bunch of lines put together. And basically they look like this to start off with, and then you take pictures and you paste the pictures onto the surfaces, and it makes them look real. So something that looks this clunky now, if you actually added some texture to the surface of it, it would look good. It would look like a real thing. Okay, so the game tab, we already saw that if you hit the play button, you run the game. Write this down. Now the inspector shows information or properties about the current object. Let's take a little peek at that and see what that looks like. Okay, so if we click, so we're working on this particular object. If I go over here to the inspector, it tells us all kinds of information about it. Okay, and we're going to be using this later, but this will tell you information about the currently selected object. Okay, and the hierarchy shows a list. Write this down. A text list of all the objects in the scene. Sometimes the objects are really hard to find, so you need this hierarchy list. And then the project and console are for viewing all the files in the project and messages from the code. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so you can see over here on the hierarchy, here's just a list of all the stuff that's in the project. Okay, down here we have the project. Here's all the stuff in the game as well as code. Okay, so we can find all that stuff down here, and then the console will give you the error messages. Okay. Okay, so C# versus JavaScript, you can use both. There's advantages and disadvantages to each. Some people like one, some people like the other. For now, we're going to be using C#, but oftentimes when you borrow resources off the internet, they're going to be in JavaScript, but they both work just fine. And that's it for part 1, and then finish all this up, and then go on to part 2.